Poses, I suppose the first one to ask you is, how did you keep going? How did you, make this film in a way of reinvention, becoming a filmmaker?
Well, it was difficult, to say the least. I actually had to hire somebody to go through my films, choose the films I'd finished before, the completed films, not the archive stuff I actually released, and choose a screen grab or two, still image or two from each film in which Adrian appeared. And because I couldn't stand to look at the home movies in which he appeared, it was just too difficult for me. I knew eventually I would be able to do it, but I couldn't do it for a long time, many months after he died. So I had these series of stills, one for each film, starting with time indefinite, and something to do with the wall, and then when we got to 6 o'clock news, and the films after that in Paraguay, White Leaves, and Photographic Memory. And somehow just beginning to write thoughts about him as I looked at these stills and beginning to put it into prose, helped break the ice for me. It was just a simple device. Doesn't mean it wasn't painful, it was, but because it was a still photograph, it didn't have the same effect on me that the motion pictures would have. There was no audio of it, just pictures of it. After a while, I was able to begin to think about going into the footage and kind of looking at it again. And I don't even know exactly how many months went by, but I started to throw together an assemblage and then a rough cut of the film. It took years.
Was that prose writing, did that become the voiceover, or was that a separate process of writing?
Yeah, voiceover is a separate process. Seeing the images and doing the writing to the images that I did before I even touched the footage helped me a lot. Began to think about how do I want to narrate that, and that's pretty soon after that I realized some of it needed to be addressed directly to my son, which is something I've never tried before in a documentary. All my films are narrated in a similar way, except that they're third person, or first person from my point of view. He did this, I did that. This was you, Adrian, talking to him, to you. That was different. I wasn't sure it would work. I tried it out on people who were helping me, primarily Mark Miata, who's in the audience somewhere, Young Kim, my wife. I think you two were the first who saw this experiment and said, keep going, it's working. So,
those of us who know your films follow them for years. In a way, we feel that we have seen Adrian grow up. But I know you've also been emphatic in stating that the films capture only part of life, it's not all of life. So how did you approach chronicling or recreating not only Adrian's story, but also your relationship from all the archives and imagery that you have?
How did I approach structuring it?
Well, you're reflecting on your relationship with Adrian, but how did you begin to grasp such a thing through the material, the archive that you have?
I think what I did was I allowed the footage to dictate what I thought should be the modes that would be used in the film, and then I would design some narrative to go along, some narration to go along with it. That's the way I always start my films, is I take the scenes that I think have the most potential for having an impact on people who see it. For instance, I knew right after I filmed it, actually, I knew that the crayfishing scene would be something that would be important in some way at some point. I didn't know how. And then as we started working on it, that was the first scene that we cut. And it seemed to earn a place that would be in the beginning of the film. And so I set that aside and I started doing the same thing with other footage. And meanwhile, I was keeping this is a long story. Maybe I should go back and say in 2008, I was already working on another film, and I started. The challenge was and it was a film I couldn't continue after Adrian died because it just seemed too trivial in a way, and it had to do with the remaking of Sherman's March into a fiction film. That was what the whole film was going to be about at one point, and so I think the big challenge for me was figuring out. And again, I had lots of help in figuring it out. Mark and John, and later Joe Beatty, who's a wonderful editor, came in and consulted on this film for quite a while. Those three people were instrumental in helping me pull it together. What is different? What does one have to do with the other? What does this attempt to turn Sherman's March into fiction, which has, and the other theme of night mortality, as represented in Sherman's March, the two Sherman's Marches, one is in progress and one already finished, that, if they keep taking their time finishing or working on Sherman's March fiction film, I'll die before it's done. And the film will have to imagine what the rest of my life was like. And Adrian, of course, his death helped me get the two scenes together. And you could make a case, perhaps, for the fact that you didn't need the Sherman's March material. It should have just been about Adrian. If I said that, I can imagine that could have been a response. And yet, I think what happens in the course of the film that has to do with Adrian is just so sad, tragic, that it would be difficult to release a film that only did that. So Sherman's March earned its way into the film in a way that I hadn't imagined once Adrian died.
We also get the wonderful phrase from Charlene, the way you remember things of people is by caring about them. So there's such an echo between those storylines. I would say one of the great gifts of the film, if I can say, is to discover Adrian as an image maker, as a filmmaker who has a strong perspective, certainly, on filmmaking and on media. What was the process of working through that imagery? Did you discover it posthumously? Had you been aware of how he was filming and what he was filming?
We filmed a lot of it in Colorado, and I was still in Boston. So I certainly didn't know or had not seen that material that he shot in Colorado. I've seen like it film material that he shot in Boston and had a sense of what he was up to. But I don't think he had a coherent sense of what he really wanted to do until he got to Colorado. And once I did figure that out, I realized, well, he should have a voice in this film too.
He really does. One part of that that's so touching is that, that we see throughout his childhood and negotiation with the camera, that it becomes clear at a certain point that the camera is an important bond or maybe an important place where you're able to connect in this kind of the hardest moments of our struggle with addiction. Is that something that you looked at the time, that was a way that you could connect?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always felt that, I didn't know for sure that it would turn out this way, but that filming Adrian was represented a kind of bond between us. He really liked being filmed. I think that was pretty clear at the beginning. His response to being filmed, almost too much so, to the point of being a little self-conscious about it. And I really liked filming him. And so it was a very natural thing to unfold, and it certainly gave us half a dozen, perhaps more scenes, especially when these little children, a child, that exist in this film.
You've often said, when you say in the film, that the personal nature of these works are really about understanding the world, or seeing the world through your eyes, or the broader world. I'm wondering how that operated for this film, which touches on obliquely the opioid crisis, but there's so much of the outside world that does that you feel inside the frame. How do you negotiate that in a work so personal as this?
It's hard. There were several versions of the film in which the opioid crisis was represented much more directly. And at one point, I even had these placards which would appear. This is my idea behind it was that I'm going ahead through my life living sort of normal, diurnal days going by, and got this fictionalizing Sherman's March, and Mariah, my daughter, comes over and fixes dinner, and these things that just keep happening, and Adrian, comes in and leaves, he's got his own life. Meanwhile, out in the world are happening with this growing opioid crisis. It's like a war out there, and people are dying, large numbers of people are dying. And so the placards, the little cards that I inserted, there were 3 or 4 of them, and gave the death figures for that particular point. 25,000 people died at this period, and another 40,000 people in that period, 60,000 people on the third period, and the totals for given each time are unique. And about that time, a number of significant films documentaries directly dealing with the opioid crisis were released. I think more, the most obvious was Laura Porter's All the Beauty of the Bloodshed. And she did a wonderful combining of Nan Goldin's photography with the opioid crisis and Nan's attempt to sort of explore it through her own life. And I felt, and it was really just about the opioid crisis, not so much about Nan's life, although there was some family material in that film as well. And I thought that film did such a wonderful job of bringing that to the forefront of the consciousness of the American public to some degree, that I should probably just try to keep it more easy or more personal in the film that I was working on. There are also many other documentaries and television shows that try to point out this growing surge, this catastrophic wave of addiction that was occurring as a result of the opioid crisis.
If you're open to it, shall we take a few questions?
Yes, but before we do that, I think there's some people in the audience that, I mean, there are a lot, I don't even know if there are a lot, but there are quite a few people I know here. I'm sorry, I can't point all of you out, but there's some people who are involved in the making of the film that I really would like to sort of stand up and just say your names very quickly, or I'll say them, you stand up. Mark, stand up, please. From 2008 all the way to the completion of the film. Now, it doesn't mean he didn't do anything else with his life. He did have a life. But it was interesting to know you were the sort of person who kept me going on it in the way that I wanted to go. You didn't try to tell me what to do, but you were incredibly supportive, and I'll always be grateful for that. And you're a terrific producer. I mean, he's a good filmmaker too. So, yeah. And my wife, young Kim, lending her angelic presence to my film, but also having made 4 feature-length documentaries herself, was an accomplished editor, and she was really instrumental in helping me see some things about the film that I hadn't seen as clearly as I should have. First of all, the importance of Adrian's material, things that he had shot, but I was always trying to use some of it, but she felt that this needs to be a sort of section of the film in and of itself. He had some interesting ideas he was working with, so on and so on. So that was great. And Jenny Raskin, are you still here? You are here. Really enabled me to sitting on this stage with all of you now, as opposed to in 7 years from now. By enabling to, being able to find the funds that we needed to finish the version of the film that you've seen tonight. So, Joe Beatty's not here. I think Joe's son Elias here. Is that correct? Yeah. I think the fifth screening in front of the audience. Those the ones we did in Europe. So, especially in American audiences, it's like a different experience because we speak the same language for the most part. And I'm getting used to it. And I don't know if it's therapeutic or not for me to be doing this. There are times when I think, I can't do this anymore. Every time I go to the film, it's like going to the funeral again, to be honest. And yet, I do feel the support of people who come to see it, and if they're interested in Adrian and my film, it helps me to think that it is a worthwhile thing for me to come and try to discuss it. I don't know if I'll continue to do this indefinitely, but so far so good.
Other questions?
One third person.
Hi, this was a thought I had while kind of going into the first section about the making of this fictionalized version of Sherman's March. And part one of the question, why did you say yes to that? But also kind of a sub-question is, how often do you find yourself making decisions that affect your everyday life as a way of finding a new way to make a film about something? Or how often do you find yourself making a film about something that you've made a choice about in your real life? And how do you separate those two things?
Well, one at a time, I said yes to the interest that was posed to me in turning Sherman's March into a fictional feature, because I was actually curious to see if it could be done. And Steve Carr, Steve, are you in the audience? Steve was genuinely enthusiastic about the film. And I've had people who've been enthusiastic about Sherman's March for a long time as a documentary, and that's fine. That was really good. Steve was really the first person who said, no, this would make a really interesting fiction film. And it was a totally new thought to me. Now, the other factor involving me saying yes was that, as I say in the film, I really did need to find something to do that did not directly involve my family members, at least for a while. And suddenly, here was Steve Carr, Archangel, come down, and I had this golden opportunity, or so I thought, to make a film that didn't really involve my direct family members. And so I said yes. I mean, and I actually thought that there was a good chance that not a good chance, but another reality of Hollywood went out of every.
This close.
Went out of every, 1,000 scripts that gets written, ends up turning into a movie. And I said, those are the odds. Let's go with it and see what happens. And there'll be something in there to render a decent documentary. But Steve, I appreciate the patience with it, and sorry that it didn't work out.
Did you ever imagine a chamber opera?
Talk about out of the blue even more so than Steve Carr. No, I did not. And it didn't take me long to realize after I got the call they wanted permission to use portions of from Sherman's March in their opera, which you saw. And I was thinking, this is amazing, and this is one of the most surreal things I could possibly imagine. So I didn't know, of course, I didn't know anybody involved in the production, but it was really all over the world.
Okay, a few more questions.
Thank you for the film. It's very beautiful. It was very sad and also very funny, and I was curious, or I thought it was very funny. I was curious if you intended it to be that funny, and especially some scenes with Adrian were quite funny. Were you surprised at how funny it turned out?
Well, I knew, as I said earlier, I knew that this film needed some levity somewhere. It would be on girl start to finish. And maybe I'm just not honest enough a filmmaker to make a movie like that that would be truthful and actually closer to the truth part than what is in here. But a kind of truth that people, we all know we're going to die. We all know people we love die. Why do I need to make a film about it? And unless the film can have some kind of energy, can draw some sort of energy from the humorous side of life as represented by what people do and what they say. So I was always attuned as I worked on the film, sometimes alone, sometimes with some of the people I mentioned, that we needed to just remember that the comic moments, those will be valuable down the line. And what surprised me tonight, because the sound system in here is terrific, and the images are beautiful, and we've had good screenings in Europe and then a few in the United States, but not quite as beautiful as the ones we had here tonight. What surprised me was that when people laughed at certain moments, I had never thought about it being funny. And I'll give you an example was when my doctor, my GP, my brain, and I said, but the odds are it's going to be okay. And she goes, odds are you're going to live. And there was laughter. Sitting next to my wife, I said, what's so funny? But, so there were a few moments like that that surprised me. Delighted that people found that amusing. My possible death. Comic material, that's okay. But there were moments like it seemed would be funny to most audiences. In Islam, there was like a sort of respectful quiet. Here, there was laughter. And the other example of that was the woman making the flower box. I say, making one flower box after all spring is on the way. To me, like surgery 24 hours, 48 hours away, looks like a coffin. There was laughter for that. And I sort of hoped they would be, but I didn't know for sure. So, that was gratifying. There's little moments like that, pockets where I kind of picked through, and I found some of the laughter surprised me, and some I was hoping for, but didn't know for sure if it would work.
That's New Yorkers.
First, I'd like to say I think this is one of the most touching documentaries that I've ever seen. And may I ask how the other members of your family have reacted to this film?
Is that a family number? Oh, they're raising their phones. My ex-wife, Marilyn, was reluctant to see the film for a long time because she loved my son, and she couldn't imagine seeing. First of all, she was worried about just seeing the images of him would be too much emotionally, and so I just kept saying to her, when you're ready, we'll show you what I've been working on. And she finally, about 3 months ago, said, I think I need to see this film you're about to release it. And I said, okay, when we look at it, anything that you're unhappy about in which you appear, I can still change it because it's not like him, but you have to let me know this. So I gave her the film, and she did look at it, and then we met in a cafe afterwards. I said, is there anything that I should change? And she said, no, but she did say, it just makes me sad that Adrian's, the detail with which you render his addiction and the state that he was in towards the end is now going to be in the public domain. And that was her major comment about it. And she didn't say, don't release the film, and she didn't say anything like that. And I took that to heart. I think Adrian himself, when he was making a film in which he was going to have his struggles be front and center, he thrown himself injected, which I couldn't use. I just couldn't bear to put it in the film. He did many several times. So some part of him wanted this to be part of some film that he would then put in public. And so he would have wanted some representation of what he's going through. And I don't know if Marilyn will end up coming to that conclusion, but that's not her assessment now. Mariah, my daughter, will see the film eventually. She hasn't seen it yet. She knows about it, and I think there'll be a time when she'll be ready to see it. But can be very emotional for her.
Thank you.
This film is such a unique masterpiece. It's not like any other film I've seen. And I suspect that you don't think of yourself as a prolific filmmaker. But thinking about it now, thinking back through all the titles of films you've made, actually you are. And the absurdity of this one-act opera based on Sherman's March astonished me so much, and it's so funny as an idea. So maybe someone should do a full-scale opera, because this is an art form that holds both comedy and tragedy in perfect balance often. And it could be an opera that covers all of your work.
I have to say, I didn't know where you were. This woman, please stand up. This is Ina Swansea, daughter of Charlene Swansea. And beside her, this is like a family reunion. The son, the grandson of Charlene, and he said,
Being with family and loved ones is